My twin sister, Chloe, and I both completed medical school, graduating with $300,000 in student debt. During our celebratory dinner, our parents presented her with a check covering that exact amount. When I inquired about my own financial obligations, my mother regarded me with a chilling demeanor and stated, "She has a greater claim to it, dear. You must be pragmatic." They were, in a sense, correct. The time for pragmatism had indeed arrived, though they were unaware of the full scope of my reality. They had absolutely no knowledge of the trust fund bequeathed to me by my grandmother, nor of the $5 million contribution I was prepared to make under my own name. Before I proceed with sharing my narrative, I would be grateful if you could indicate your geographical location. Kindly show your appreciation by liking this video and subscribing if you have ever found yourself in the position of being the less favored child within your family. The celebratory dinner was hosted at an upscale establishment in Buckhead, the kind of place where the waitstaff are clad in pristine white jackets and the wine list feels weighty in one's grasp. The atmosphere was heavy with forced merriment and the pervasive scent of expensive perfume. I sat there, Dr. Amani Price, experiencing the familiar, constricting sensation in my chest. Across the table, my twin sister, Dr. Chloe Price, was radiating with joy. Our father, James Price, rose to his feet and gently tapped his crystal goblet with a spoon. He commanded the room with his usual authority. "I would like to propose a toast," he announced, his voice resonating with the pride of a successful Atlanta entrepreneur, "to a truly remarkable accomplishment for the Price family." He and my mother, Michelle, turned to Chloe with matching effusive smiles. "My daughter, Dr. Chloe Price," James continued, "a graduate in the highly esteemed field of plastic surgery. We are immensely proud." My mother then retrieved a small cream-colored envelope from her handbag and smoothly slid it across the polished surface of the table to Chloe. "A small graduation gift, my darling," Michelle said, "to embark upon your new life." Chloe opened it, and her gasp was a performance in itself. "Mom, Dad, is this what I think it is?" "It is a check for $300,000. James declared, ensuring his voice carried to the neighboring tables. "We are settling your entire student loan debt. We could not allow you to begin your marriage burdened by such an obligation." Chloe's fiancé, Trevor Van Pelt, a scion of a prosperous white family that effectively owned a significant portion of North Atlanta, leaned in and kissed her. "My family is absolutely delighted," Trevor commented, his voice smooth and self-assured. "We are thrilled that Chloe is joining the Van Pelt lineage unencumbered." My mother beamed at his evident approval. "Indeed, Trevor," she affirmed, "Chloe's chosen specialty is such a superb investment, so much prestige." A wave of blood drained from my face. My own student loan balance stood at $32,000. I had, after all, just earned my degree from the exact same medical institution. I cleared my throat. The convivial chatter at the table abruptly ceased. And what about me? The question hung in the air, sharp and unwelcome. My father's brow furrowed, his mood soured by the interruption. "What about my debt, Dad?" I pressed. We graduated at the same time." The ambient music seemed to falter. My father's proud smile contorted into an expression of vexation. "Amani," he stated, his tone low and laced with warning, "do not mar your sister's special evening. Your circumstances are entirely distinct." I fixed my gaze upon him, my hands clenching in my lap. "Distinct how?" I inquired. "We both earned our degrees. We both dedicated ourselves with equal effort. We both hold the same professional title. We are both physicians." My mother, Michelle, set her wine glass down with a decisive click. She leaned forward, her diamond jewelry glinting in the light. Chloe is marrying Trevor, she explained, as if addressing a child of limited understanding. She's becoming part of the Van Pelt family. Her standing has changed. We cannot have her entering that distinguished family, weighed down by student debt. It reflects unfavorably upon us. I found myself utterly incredulous. But my debt also reflects upon you, does it not? I am your daughter. Be realistic, Amani, my mother admonished, her voice losing its veneer of politeness. Chloe selected a specialty that yields significant prestige, plastic surgery. It is an exceptionally profitable profession, a worthwhile endeavor. You, however, chose community pediatrics. You will be serving in underserved clinics for a fraction of the remuneration. Frankly, you can simply apply for one of those government loan forgiveness programs. Do not be so self-centered. This is your sister's moment. I glanced across the table. Trevor, the affluent fiancé, was suddenly engrossed in observing the ice cubes in his water glass, pointedly avoiding my gaze, and Chloe, though concealed behind her champagne flute, I perceived it. A subtle, triumphant smirk. She was relishing this. She was enjoying my demotion. In that singular, icy moment, the truth became blindingly clear. This was not a gift intended for Chloe. It was a strategic transaction. It was a dowry disguised as a check, meticulously crafted to impress my sister's influential and affluent in-laws. It was an investment in the daughter who was marrying into greater societal standing, the one who would elevate the Price family name. I was the other daughter, the one who had opted to dedicate her skills to our community, the one who was not securing a marriage to a man of considerable wealth. I was not a prudent investment. I was merely a liability. I have no recollection of the drive home. I must have settled with the valet, navigated to my vehicle, and traversed the Atlanta traffic, but my mind was a complete void. The city lights of Buckhead streamed past my window, dissolving into abstract canvases of orange and white, as if tears were perpetually smeared across my vision. All that echoed in my ears was my mother's voice. She has a greater claim to it, dear. My grip on the steering wheel tightened to the point where my knuckles ached. This sentiment was not new. It was simply amplified. I recalled standing in that very restaurant parking lot when I was 18, clutching my letter of partial scholarship to Emory. I was bursting with pride. I had rushed to my father, proudly demonstrating that I had personally covered half the cost. "Dad," I had pleaded, "it's just the remaining tuition. I will work, I promise." My father had shaken his head, his expression one of disappointment. "Be realistic, Amani. We must be prudent with our finances. A state university is perfectly adequate. We cannot simply finance these extravagant private aspirations." 3 months later, at Chloe's 18th birthday celebration, I observed my parents present her with a check for $50,000. "For our budding entrepreneur," my mother announced to the round of applause from our relatives. "Chloe's boutique is poised to revolutionize the online fashion industry." That particular venture, while costing them every penny, only persisted for 6 months, yet they never once characterized it as a poor investment. I furtively wiped away a tear that finally escaped as I approached my designated exit ramp. It seemed to appear too quickly. I drove past the community health center, where I had been completing my pediatric rotations. The building was dark, its parking lot deserted. I remembered my immense excitement when I informed my mother that I had secured that placement. We were at our customary Sunday dinner, and I was detailing how I had assisted a family in establishing an improved asthma management plan for their child. My mother merely sighed and interjected, "That's pleasant, dear, but you are squandering that medical degree." Honestly, Amani, no one respects a financially struggling physician. When will you secure a substantial career like your sister? She will be earning $500,000 annually. I finally pulled into the parking garage of my rented apartment building. It was a secure and clean environment, yet it represented a world apart from the gated community where Trevor resided, or the expansive estate owned by my parents. I entered my quiet apartment, deposited my keys in the designated bowl, and found it awaiting me on the kitchen table. A red-lettered envelope from the student loan servicer. Your first payment is now due, $32,000. The full weight of the evening, and indeed the preceding 30 years, descended upon me. I slid down the kitchen cabinets, my formal attire bunching around me, and finally succumbed to a wave of sobs. I remained on the cold kitchen floor for what felt like an eternity. The tears had subsided, replaced by a profound, desperate numbness. I could not accept this reality. Perhaps they simply had not comprehended. Perhaps I had not articulated myself clearly enough. If only I could converse with my mother privately, away from the pressure of the restaurant setting and the presence of Trevor's family, perhaps she would understand. I needed her to understand. I retrieved my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I dialed her number. She answered on the third ring, her voice sounding distracted. Amani, is everything all right? Your father and I have just returned home? No, Mom, I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. Nothing is all right. I need to speak with you about the dinner, about the money. I heard her sigh, a sound of pure exasperation. Amani, I thought we had concluded this matter. You truly spoiled your sister's evening. I spoiled her evening, I retorted, the injustice of it stinging. Mom, I am not requesting a gift. I am requesting a loan, the exact same sum you provided to Chloe. I will sign all necessary documentation. I will pay interest. I will repay every cent as soon as my residency concludes. I simply cannot commence my professional life burdened by such substantial debt. Please. A prolonged, icy silence ensued on the other end of the line. When my mother finally spoke, her voice was entirely devoid of emotion, stripped of any warmth it might have feigned at the restaurant. Amani, I will state this as plainly as possible so that you finally comprehend. We are not giving you the money. We are not loaning you the money. The answer is no. But why? I whispered. Why her and not me? Because, my mother replied, her voice descending into a low, cruel cadence. She deserves it more. Honey, your sister has conducted herself impeccably. She selected a profession that will generate significant income and bring prestige to this family. She has chosen a husband who enhances our social standing. She is bringing honor to the Price name. And you? What do you contribute, Amani? You bring patients from low-income backgrounds, protracted hours for negligible compensation, and a specialization that makes you sound like a social worker, not a doctor. You are a financial and social encumbrance. Those words struck me with the force of a physical blow. An encumbrance. After 30 years of striving for perfection, of achieving exemplary grades, of adhering to every rule, I was simply a burden. So that is it, I stated, my voice hollow. All those years, it simply boils down to me not being a worthwhile investment. Precisely, Michelle affirmed. You embrace this idealistic, non-profit path. Amani, you chose to be difficult. You chose to spurn the opportunities your father and I endeavored to provide you. You made your choice. Now you must live with its consequences. I must depart. Trevor's parents are telephoning me to discuss wedding arrangements. The line went dead with a click. I remained there in the darkness, the phone still pressed to my ear. It was over. The final door had slammed shut. The last vestige of hope that I could ever earn their approval, that I could ever be perceived as their equal, had vanished. She deserves it more. The words echoed in the silence of my apartment, in the silence of my heart. They reverberated until they ceased to sound like an insult and began to resemble a declaration of war. I sat on the floor for another minute, allowing the frigid stillness of the apartment to mirror the coldness in my heart. The tears ceased, the trembling subsided. The profound, desperate grief that had overwhelmed me moments before was being consumed, replaced by something entirely new. It was a cold, hard, clarifying fury. My mother was mistaken. I was not a burden. I was not a poor investment, and I most certainly would not spend my life pleading for their validation. I stood up, my movements now measured and deliberate. I walked into my modest home office, sat at my desk, and opened my laptop. I did not access my banking account, the one containing the few $1,000s I had accumulated from residency stipends. Instead, I opened a separate, encrypted financial portal. I entered a username and a complex password. The screen loaded and the name displayed at the apex of the account did not read Dr. Amani Price. It read Dr. Amani Preston, my grandmother's name. My eyes scanned the account details. The camera would register it clearly, the Florence Preston Trust, and directly beneath it the current balance, $4,200,000. As I gazed at the figures, my grandmother's voice resonated in my mind, as clear as the day she confided her secret to me, mere months before her passing. "Your mother, Michelle," her voice echoed, "is a weak woman. She defers to your father, and your father sees value only in that which mirrors him. He sees Marcus. He does not see you." I remembered sitting on her porch, her frail hand resting upon mine. "That is why I am leaving this to you, Amani. But there is a condition. You will not have complete access until you achieve your highest educational milestone. Obtain that MD, pursue that PhD, and complete what you commence. This inheritance is not a gift, it is protective armor. Employ it to ensure your independence. Use it so that you will never be compelled to solicit a single thing from those individuals. Never permit them to underestimate you." I had completed my degree. I had fulfilled her stipulation. The funds had been released into my complete control on the very day I graduated. The very day my parents had chosen to publicly humiliate me. I looked at the amount, $4.2 million, sufficient to settle my debts, purchase a residence, and establish my own practice. Enough to attain my freedom. Just as I was about to log out, a new email notification appeared on my screen. The sender was Chloe. My heart began to pound. The subject line read, "You are cordially invited to Dr. Chloe's debt-free celebration." I clicked it open. It was an elaborate digital invitation, replete with photographs of Chloe and Trevor, inviting 100 of their closest acquaintances to a lavish soiree at the Buckhead Golf Club the following weekend. "Join us in celebrating my new beginnings," the card cheerfully chirped. I studied the invitation. I then looked at the balance of my trust fund, and for the first time that evening a smile touched my lips, a genuine, remarkably cold smile. "A party," I murmured to myself. What a splendid notion. I clicked the RSVP button. "We shall attend." I stared at the ostentatious invitation displayed on my screen. Chloe's smiling visage beamed back at me. Debt-free celebration. A chilling laugh escaped my lips. It was almost too perfect. My finger hovered over the RSVP button, and then I pressed it decisively. Dr. Amani Preston will be in attendance. The anger had dissipated, replaced by a disquieting clarity. My mother had instructed me to accept the consequences of my choices. Very well. It was time for them to confront the repercussions of mine. I retrieved my phone and dialed a number etched into my memory. The phone rang once before a calm, professional voice responded. "Henderson Law, David speaking." "Hello, Mr. Henderson," I said, my voice steady. "This is Amani Price, or rather Amani Preston. Dr. Preston." His tone immediately warmed. I was wondering when I would hear from you. Your grandmother would be immensely proud. I trust the account transfer was executed seamlessly." "It was, thank you," I replied, "but I am actually calling regarding another matter, the one my grandmother and I discussed, the Florence Preston Community Fund." "Ah, yes," Henderson acknowledged, "the $5 million charitable endowment. Your grandmother was exceptionally specific regarding those instructions. It is to be donated in your full name, at a time and place of your choosing, to a pediatric charity. It is entirely separate from your personal trust." I glanced back at the invitation glowing on my laptop screen. "I have found the perfect time and place," I declared. "My sister Chloe Price is hosting a party this Saturday at the Buckhead Golf Club. I need you to be present." "A party?" Henderson sounded perplexed. "My family is celebrating." I chose my words with precision. "They are making a donation of their own. I feel it presents the ideal opportunity to publicly honor my grandmother's wishes." There was a brief pause, and I could practically envision the seasoned lawyer smiling. "I understand. A public stage. Your grandmother would have appreciated the dramatic flair of that. Consider it done. I shall have the ceremonial check prepared, and we shall meet you there. It will be my distinct pleasure to make that announcement, Dr. Preston." "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I will see you Saturday." I ended the call and walked over to my small closet. It was filled with medical scrubs, sensible sweaters, and the single formal dress I had worn to the graduation dinner. None of it would suffice, not for this. If I was going to attend Chloe's debt-free celebration, I would not merely show up. I would make an entrance they would forever remember. I required a new gown, something exceptional, something that conveyed the impression of $4 million. I ended the call and approached my modest wardrobe, my mind racing. I was not merely planning to attend a party. I was orchestrating an ambush. I needed to embody the part. As I was selecting the single, sensible black dress I owned, my phone rang again. It was Mr. Henderson. "Dr. Preston," he said, his voice hesitant. "I apologize for calling back immediately, but there is one other matter, a rather sensitive one." I paused, the dress held midair. "What is it?" "While reviewing your grandmother's portfolio, I came across a file she kept separate from all other documentation. It pertains to your father's company, Price Properties LLC. My stomach tightened. "What about it?" "It appears," Henderson continued, and I heard the rustling of papers, "that 10 years ago your father obtained a substantial business loan, a very risky high-interest commercial loan for $10 million to cover a failed development project. A project, I might add, which he informed your grandmother had simply lost its funding." "I do not understand," I stated. "What does that have to do with Grandma Florence?" "He secured that loan," Henderson explained, his voice grave, "by utilizing your grandmother's primary commercial real estate holdings as collateral, specifically the building on Peachtree Street that houses her foundation." "But she would never have consented to that," I protested, sinking onto the edge of my bed. "Precisely," Henderson replied. "She never did. According to her private notations, she only discovered this encumbrance 3 years ago, when she was in the process of restructuring her own estate. She learned that he had forged her signature on the collateral agreement." He forged her signature?" "He did." Florence was incensed, but she was also remarkably pragmatic. She recognized that calling in the loan or exposing him would devastate the family enterprise and, in her words, tarnish the family name. Thus, she devised a far more astute solution. She purchased the debt. She had her bank acquire the loan from the original creditor. She then transferred ownership of that loan directly into your trust. My mind reeled. What? What does that signify?" "It signifies," Henderson stated, that your father does not owe the bank $10 million. He owes you as the sole beneficiary and manager of the Florence Preston Trust. You are now his principal creditor. Your grandmother retained all of the original forged documentation. You possess the authority to demand repayment of that loan, Amity, and if you do so, Price Properties will be insolvent within 24 hours. He will be bankrupt. I looked at the invitation displayed on my computer screen, then at the sensible dress in my hand. I dropped the dress. I did not merely possess my own funds, I held a weapon. The entire future of the Price family, the very legacy they valued above me, was now within my grasp. The Buckhead Golf Club was even more ostentatious than my recollection served. Valets in sharp red vests efficiently opened car doors as a procession of Mercedes and Bentleys glided towards the grand entrance. I had opted for an Uber. I disembarked alone, clad in a simple, floor-length emerald green silk gown. I had allocated a modest portion of my trust fund for its acquisition, and it was worth every penny. The colour evoked wealth, and it fit impeccably. As I ascended the stone steps, I could feel the weight of it. This was Chloe's social circle, Trevor's milieu. I did not belong, and I no longer cared. I had not even crossed the main threshold before my parents intercepted me. My mother, Michelle, rushed forward, her face a tense tableau of social anxiety. My father, James, was directly behind her, his expression dark and thunderous. "Amani!" my mother hissed, her hand seizing my elbow and pulling me aside, out of the stream of arriving guests. "I am absolutely astounded you chose to attend. I believed you possessed more discretion." "You invited me, Mom," I responded, my voice remarkably calm. "I sent an RSVP. That was a formality." Her eyes snapped, darting about to ascertain if anyone was observing them. "Now that you are here, you will not utter a single word about your student loans? Do you comprehend me? You will not disgrace this family in front of the Van Pelts." My father stepped closer, leveraging his height to attempt intimidation. "This is Chloe's day," he stated, his voice a low growl. "This concerns her success and her future. You will smile, you will be courteous, and you will not create a scene. Conduct yourself appropriately." I looked at them. I truly looked at them. They were not concerned for me. They were not embarrassed on my behalf. They were, in fact, terrified of me. They were convinced I would shatter the illusion of their supposedly perfect family, exposing them to their new affluent in-laws as the very parents who had neglected to support their own daughter's ambitions. I gently disentangled my elbow from my mother's grip and smoothed the fabric of my dress. I managed a smile, projecting an image of utmost composure and courtesy. "I would never consider causing a disturbance," I stated, my tone light. "My presence here is purely to extend congratulations to my sister." With that, I moved past them, leaving them rooted at the entrance, their faces a mixture of suspicion and bewilderment. The festivities were just beginning. I entered the opulent ballroom, a space adorned with breathtaking chandeliers and overflowing with delicate white roses. My first stop was the bar, where I requested a glass of seltzer water, needing to maintain a clear head. As I turned, my sister Chloe elegantly approached me. She was resplendent in a custom white gown that shimmered under the grand lights, embodying the picture of a glowing, triumphant bride-to-be. Clutching a champagne flute, her smile held a sharp edge. "Imini, I must admit I'm quite taken aback to see you," she announced, her voice projecting loudly enough for nearby guests to overhear. "I genuinely expected you to be at home, perhaps dwelling in your disappointment, or perhaps working a double shift at the clinic." I maintained an unreadable expression. "You look remarkable, Chloe. Happiness truly suits you." Chloe emitted a delicate, high-pitched laugh that grated on my nerves. Oh, happiness and wealth, Amani. They are quite the pair, aren't they? Isn't this affair simply magnificent? Father spared absolutely no expense. She paused, then added with a subtle sting, though I suppose you wouldn't have much first-hand knowledge of that, would you? She took a dainty sip of her champagne, her diamond engagement ring catching the light. Trevor is simply wonderful. He and his parents are absolutely thrilled that I'm entering this union without any financial encumbrances. It's so vital, you understand, not to be a burden on one's new family. Her gaze swept dismissively over my simple green dress. Trevor and I are embarking on our honeymoon in Monaco, 3 weeks travelling via private jet. I can scarcely fathom the cost. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. While you, I presume, will be back at the free clinic. How incredibly noble of you, Amani. Truly? She offered another wide, patronizing smile. I heard about your graduation acknowledgement, by the way, or rather, the absence of one. Mother mentioned they simply couldn't manage it, not after funding my future. She gave my arm a condescending pat. It's such a pity. I suppose some individuals are simply more judicious investments than others. It's rather sad, really. With that, she turned and gracefully rejoined her fiancé and his affluent new relations, leaving me standing alone by the bar, the very embodiment of the overlooked and penniless. She had no inkling of what was about to unfold. I had barely set my seltzer down when my mother, Michelle, materialized beside me, her fingers digging into my arm. Amani, for heaven's sake, don't just stand there by yourself. You appear utterly lost. Come, I must introduce you to Trevor's parents. Without waiting for a response, she physically guided me across the room toward a huddle of impeccably dressed individuals. Eleanor, my mother announced, her voice an octave higher than usual, I'd like you to meet my other daughter, Imani. Eleonora Van Pelt, a tall woman adorned with jewels that were unmistakably genuine, turned her sharp gaze upon me as if scrutinizing me under a microscope. Oh, she commented, her voice thin and reedy. Imani has also just completed medical school. My mother, her grip tightening on my arm, hastened to elaborate. She'll be doing very well. It's more along the lines of social work, really, at the community children's hospital. A flush crept up my neck. I am a doctor of pediatric medicine, I stated clearly. Eleanor Van Pelt offered a slow, dismissive smile. How noble! Her eyes had already drifted past me, searching for someone she considered more significant. Ah, there she is, Chloe, my dear. Chloe glided over, bestowing kisses on both of Eleanor's cheeks. Eleonora, you look stunning. Is that this season's Chanel? You have an excellent eye, darling, Eleanor acknowledged, taking Chloe's hand and patting it. We are simply overjoyed to have you officially joining the Van Pelts. Your father was just recounting to Charles, she gestured to her stoic, silent husband, your family's most generous contribution to the new cosmetic surgery wing at Emory. $50,000. It's truly magnanimous. I felt my breath catch. $50,000. My mother emitted a nervous, high-pitched laugh. Well, we believe in supporting the institutions our children are affiliated with. We are immensely proud of Chloe's distinguished placement there. I mentally tallied the figures, the numbers swirling. $300,000 to settle Chloe's student loans, an additional $50,000 donated to her future place of employment, all to impress this particular family. Meanwhile, I was being advised to pursue government loan forgiveness programs. This wasn't merely an oversight, it was a deliberate financial statement proclaiming my insignificance. Just as I was processing this fresh layer of betrayal, the ballroom lights dimmed slightly, and a spotlight illuminated a small stage at the front of the room. My father, James Price, stood there, tapping the microphone. Good evening, everyone, he announced, his voice resonating through the hall. "Thank you all for attending. This is a truly momentous occasion. We are not only commemorating one daughter's academic achievement, but also celebrating the continued success and bright future of the Price family." He smiled, allowing the polite applause to subside. "As many of you are aware, our family firmly believes in investing in our children. We are committed to providing them with the essential tools for success at the highest echelons, and our daughter, Chloe, has certainly exemplified this. A brilliant physician specializing in a field demanding exceptional artistry." He gestured towards Chloe, who rose and blew a kiss to the assembly. Trevor and his parents applauded enthusiastically. "It is for this reason," my father continued, "that Michelle and I were overjoyed to fully settle her entire $300,000 student loan debt." More applause erupted. I simply stared at my plate, but my father raised his hand, saying, "We felt that was insufficient. Success is not solely about personal acquisition, it is also about contributing back. It's about aligning our family with institutions that embody excellence." He directed his gaze pointedly towards the Van Pelt family's table. "Therefore, tonight, in addition to celebrating Chloe, the Price Family Fund is honored to present a donation of $50,000 to the new Van Pelt wing of the Emory Cosmetic Hospital, where Dr. Chloe will commence her distinguished career." The room erupted. The applause was thunderous this time. Eleanor and Charles Van Pelt rose, raising their glasses to my father. Trevor embraced Chloe proudly. My mother appeared on the verge of tears of happiness, and I sat at a table near the back, completely and utterly invisible. They had just announced a $50,000 contribution, money they claimed they didn't have for my loans, to a hospital wing named after one of Atlanta's wealthiest families. They weren't just disregarding my debt, they were actively channeling family resources to the affluent, all while I was being directed to solicit government assistance. As the deafening applause finally began to wane, and my father was about to conclude, another man, older and impeccably dressed in a sharp, conservative suit, approached the stage from the side, carrying a simple leather portfolio. My parents exchanged confused glances. "Please excuse this interruption," the man stated, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the lingering chatter. "My name is David Henderson. I am the attorney representing the estate of the late Florence Preston. I also have an announcement regarding a donation this evening." My father, James, stared at the man on the stage, his face a picture of utter bewilderment. He leaned over and whispered frantically to my mother, "David Henderson, what is he doing here? Mother's estate was finalized years ago. I assumed that fund was closed." My mother, Michelle, simply shook her head. Her frozen smile held eyes wide with a sudden, dawning panic. She had no comprehension of the unfolding situation. The entire room was hushed, every gaze fixed on the stage, awaiting an explanation for this unexpected interjection. Mr. Henderson adjusted the microphone, his composed demeanor a stark contrast to the palpable tension that now filled the room. "Good evening," he said, his voice resonating with quiet authority. "I am David Henderson, executor of the estate of the late Florence Preston." He paused, allowing the name to register. My grandmother, my mother's mother. The entire assembly was now paying rapt attention. The Van Pelts looked perplexed. "Mrs. Preston," he continued, "held a profound belief in supporting the Atlanta community, but more significantly, she believed in championing those individuals who undertake the arduous yet essential work. She often spoke of those who prioritize service over social standing, those who dedicate their lives in quiet, impactful ways." My heart began to pound with such intensity that I was certain the occupants of my table could hear it. I kept my gaze lowered, focusing on my hands resting in my lap. I knew what was coming. My father appeared annoyed, clearly on the verge of rising to interrupt. "David, what is the meaning of this? This is a private function," he began, but Henderson's voice effortlessly overrode his. In her personal trust, Mrs. Preston established a substantial philanthropic endowment, the Florence Preston Community Fund, with very specific directives for its implementation. I observed Chloe whispering to Trevor, visibly irritated by this disruption to her moment in the spotlight. My mother was nervously twisting the napkin in her lap, shredding the linen. Mrs. Preston's instructions were unequivocal. Henderson proceeded. This donation was to be publicly announced at a time and place designated by the Trust's sole administrator. Therefore, on behalf of the Florence Preston Trust, it is my profound honour to present a foundational contribution. He paused, withdrawing a large ceremonial check from his leather portfolio. The entire room held its breath. Henderson surveyed the crowd, his eyes scanning the tables until they landed on me, seated in my emerald green dress towards the back. He offered a warm smile, a smile of shared understanding. "This donation is made in the name of the sole beneficiary and manager of the Florence Preston Trust, a woman who embodies every value of service, intellect, and quiet dedication that Mrs. Preston so admired." He raised his arm and pointed directly at me. "Please join me in honouring Dr. Imani Preston." It felt as though all the lights in the ballroom had dimmed, replaced by a single, intense spotlight that followed only me. I pushed my chair back, the sound scraping loudly in the profound silence. I could feel every single gaze in that room fixed upon me. Hundreds of pairs of eyes. I saw confusion, annoyance, and pity. They all assumed I was the overlooked, forgotten sister, perhaps being summoned for a minor gesture of recognition. I focused on the stage, placing one foot in front of the other, the rustle of my emerald silk dress accompanying each step. I passed the Van Pelt table. I observed Eleanora's expression, a mixture of bewilderment and disdain. I walked past my sister. Chloe looked utterly furious, murmuring something to Trevor, undoubtedly resentful that I was eclipsing her spotlight. And then I passed my parents. My father, James, appeared as though he might physically intervene. My mother, Michelle, simply stared, her mouth slightly agape as if unable to process the unfolding events. I reached the stage and stepped up, standing beside Mr. Henderson. He offered me a small, encouraging nod before turning back to the astonished assembly. He held the oversized ceremonial check aloft for all to see. "On behalf of the Florence Preston Trust," he announced, his voice booming with satisfaction, "and in the name of its sole administrator, Dr. Imani Preston, we are proud to present this donation." He paused for dramatic effect. I could see my father's $50,000 donation sign still propped on an easel nearby. It looked so small. "For the sum of $5 million, Henderson declared, "to the Atlanta Community Children's Hospital." For a moment there was absolute silence, then a collective, sharp intake of breath. The room didn't just applaud, it erupted. People leaped to their feet. The sound was deafening. Camera flashes illuminated the room as everyone vied to capture the moment. 5 million. It wasn't merely a donation, it was a definitive statement. It was 100 times the value of my father's pathetic, status-seeking $50,000 gift. Every guest, every server, every member of the Van Pelt family was now fixated on me. The social work daughter, the low-income doctor, the poor investment. I avoided their direct gaze, keeping my eyes fixed on my parents. Their reaction was paramount. They looked as if they had been struck by lightning. My father's face was ashen, his hands gripping the table. My mother looked as though she had seen a ghost. They weren't merely shocked. They were utterly horrified. They had just committed the most significant, most public miscalculation of their entire lives. Mr. Henderson offered a warm smile and handed the microphone to me. The thunderous applause for my father's $50,000 donation subsided, replaced by a heavy, bewildered, and intensely curious silence. I felt hundreds of pairs of eyes locking onto me. I was the forgotten daughter, the quiet one in the sensible dress, the one who wasn't Chloe. What possible words could I have to offer? I took a deep breath, my hand steady on the microphone. "Good evening," I said. My voice was clear and amplified, reaching every corner of the ballroom. I didn't look at my parents, not yet. "I understand that many of you are likely confused at this moment. You came to celebrate my sister's remarkable achievement, and indeed we are celebrating that. But Mr. Henderson is correct. My grandmother, Florence Preston, left very specific instructions concerning her estate, instructions that she directly linked to my graduation." I then turned my gaze towards my parents, James and Michelle. They were both staring, frozen, their polite party smiles replaced by masks of disbelief and dawning horror. "I actually want to begin by thanking my parents," I stated. "They taught me a truly valuable lesson tonight. They spoke eloquently about worthy investments. They spoke about prestige. They made it abundantly clear that some choices, and perhaps some children, represent a better investment than others." A low murmur rippled through the crowd. My mother's face flushed crimson. "My grandmother, Florence," I continued, "believed in investments as well. However, her philosophy differed entirely. She did not invest in social standing or prestige, nor in what the Van Pelt family might perceive. She invested in character. She invested in service. She invested in the quiet, essential work that does not garner recognition at gatherings like this." I finally directed my eyes slowly and deliberately until they met Chloe's across the room. Her smile had vanished. "My grandmother believed," I said, my voice projecting clearly over the hushed room, "that a doctor's true worth is not determined by the zip code of their spouse or the expense of their wedding ceremony. She believed that genuine prestige is not found in assisting the affluent residents of Buckhead in obtaining a more aesthetically pleasing nose job." A sharp, collective gasp emanated from the table where the Van Pelts were seated. Eleanora looked as though she had been slapped. "Grandma Florence believed," I pressed on, "that true honor stems from assisting those who cannot offer you anything in return. She believed that aiding a child in a low-income clinic to take their first full, unhindered breath is perhaps a little more significant than assisting someone in fitting into a designer gown. This $5 million donation is not from me, it is from her. It is her legacy. It is her pronouncement from beyond the grave. She stipulated that this funding, this substantial investment, be directed to the Atlanta Community Children's Hospital, because that is the work she valued. That is the work to which I have dedicated my life. The very work my mother so casually dismissed tonight as mere social work." I looked at my mother. "You referred to me as a burden because I chose this path. You implied I was not a worthy investment, unlike Chloe." Grandma Florence disagreed. She viewed my choice not as a liability, but as the only choice that truly mattered. This donation is her affirmation. It is her conviction that prestige is not defined by the vehicle one drives, but by the community one serves. It is her belief that assisting children facing adversity is immeasurably more valuable than enabling the wealthy to feel even wealthier. I allowed the applause, which began tentatively and then swelled, to wash over the room, but I was not yet finished. I let the applause for the donation subside, holding up my hand slightly. "Please," I said, my voice still perfectly calm, "I am not finished." The room fell silent once more, the atmosphere even more intense than before. The $5 million is designated for the children, I stated. That was my grandmother's paramount wish, but she was also aware of my personal circumstances. She knew, just as everyone here knows, that I too graduated from medical school burdened with over $300,000 in student loan debt. I paused, then turned to face my parents directly. Just last night, I contacted my mother. I did not implore for a gift. I requested a loan. I offered to pay interest. I was told no. I was told, and I quote, "Your sister deserves it more." I was advised to be realistic and to pursue government assistance programs. I was told to live with my decisions. I observed my father clench his jaw, his face darkening to a deep shade of red. My mother was visibly trembling. "And I will live with my choices," I declared, because my grandmother, in her infinite wisdom and foresight, anticipated this very day. She foresaw that my parents would opt to finance one daughter's future while abandoning the other. She knew they would fund the daughter marrying into the Van Pelt family and inform the daughter working in the clinic that she was not a sound investment. My grandmother did not bestow this sum upon me as a gift, I stated, my voice softening. She provided it as a shield. She told me it was armor so that I would never have to plead with individuals like them for anything. That is why, I proclaimed, my voice rising again, my grandmother made one final provision in her personal trust. She ensured that all of her grandchildren would commence their careers on an equal footing, irrespective of their parents' favoritism. I looked directly at Chloe. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with disbelief. Therefore, in addition to the $5 million donation to the hospital, the Florence Preston Trust also fully discharged my entire $300,000 student loan debt. The transaction was finalized the very moment my medical degree was conferred. I let that sink in. The silence in the room was absolute, so profound that I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I raised my simple glass of seltzer water. "So you see, Chloe, this is truly a debt-free celebration for both of us. Congratulations, sister. It appears we both succeeded after all." The sound of Chloe's champagne flute, shattering as it slipped from her trembling hand, echoed through the ballroom. My parents stared at me, their faces contorted into masks of pure, unadulterated fury. And Trevor Van Pelt, was looking at me, the overlooked sister, as if he had never seen me before in his life. The party was unequivocally over. I stepped down from the stage. The silence in the room was a palpable entity, thick and heavy. Every eye was on me, yet I did not look at my parents or my sister. I held my head high and walked with steady purpose toward the exit. I had accomplished what I came to do. I hadn't even traversed 10 feet when a sharp, commanding voice cut through the silence. "Dr. Preston!" It was Eleanor Van Pelt. She was hurrying towards me, her husband Charles close behind, completely ignoring my parents who stood dumbfounded at their table. She intercepted me near the dance floor. Her face, which had earlier been a mask of cold disdain, was now arranged in an expression of profound admiration. "My dear, that was extraordinary," she gushed, grasping my hand. Her diamond bracelets felt icy against my skin. "We were never properly introduced. I'm Eleanor Van Pelt, your grandmother. What a woman, what a visionary." "Thank you," I replied simply. "And community pediatrics," her husband Charles added, his voice a low, impressed rumble. "Such a noble mission. We and our family hold philanthropy in high regard. Don't we, Eleonora? $5 million, that is a truly significant gesture, absolutely astonishing." "Absolutely stunning, Eleonora," I concurred. "Your grandmother clearly recognized remarkable character in you." From the periphery of my vision, I noticed Trevor advancing. He wasn't observing his parents nor Chloe, who stood transfixed by their table, her countenance a mask of shock and simmering resentment. His gaze was fixed solely on me. The former casual indifference had vanished, supplanted by a sharp analytical intensity. It was the expression of a man re-evaluating a valuable acquisition. Imani, he acknowledged, positioning himself directly between his mother and me. He employed my given name, yet with a newfound deference that felt as smooth and unsettling as oil spreading on water. I am utterly speechless. I had no inkling of your profound dedication to philanthropy. I mean, $5 million. That's a lasting legacy. It is my grandmother's legacy, I corrected him, but it represents your administration, he countered, his smile now warm and intimate. I am deeply involved with several charitable organizations myself. I had no idea we shared such common ground. We truly must converse. I would be most eager to hear your perspectives on community investment. He had completely and unequivocally turned his back on my sister. I could see her standing there, isolated, her hands balled into tight fists at her sides, her pristine white gown now appearing as a costume for a role she had just forfeited. Then she moved. She strode across the floor, her features contorted in a manner I had never witnessed before. The perfectly crafted facade had crumbled, replaced by raw, unadulterated fury. She seized my arm, whirling me around to face her. "You," she hissed, her voice a low, venomous whisper. "You orchestrated this. You did this solely to humiliate me. You have utterly ruined my evening." I disentangled my arm from Chloe's grip. "I embarrassed you?" I inquired, my voice dangerously subdued. "I accepted a bequest from our grandmother, a bequest she designated for me, knowing both you and them. You made me appear a fool." Chloe stammered, her fury faltering into confusion as she perceived Trevor and his parents observing us with keen attention. "I made no mention of you, Chloe," I stated. I simply recounted the truth about myself. You were the one who declared I was not a worthwhile investment. You are the one who asserted I deserved nothing. It seems Grandma Florence held a differing opinion. "Imani!" My mother's voice was sharp. She and my father hurried over, pushing past a stunned Chloe. My mother's face displayed a horrifying amalgamation of pallid shock and unvarnished desperate avarice. "That fund," Mr. Henderson interjected, $4.2 million. Imani, why did you not inform us? Why would you conceal such a significant matter from your family?" I regarded my mother, the very woman who mere hours before had characterized me as a burden, the same woman who, just an hour prior, had attempted to obscure me from her newly affluent acquaintances. "Why, mother?" I asked, my voice devoid of emotion. "Why would I inform you so you could manage it for me? So you could persuade me to invest it in Chloe's esteemed specialty? So you could devise a method to bestow it upon her?" "That is not. We are your family," Michelle implored, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. "No, you were correct on one point, Mother. You advised me to be pragmatic. You stated I had made my choice and must accept its consequences. You instructed me to look after myself, and I have. I always have." My mother appeared as though I had physically struck her, but before she could respond, my father grasped my other arm, his grip like iron. He was not merely embarrassed, he looked utterly terrified. "Cease this immediately," he commanded, pulling me away from the throng toward a secluded alcove near the bar. His eyes were wide with a panic that transcended mere social standing. "What do you imagine you are doing?" he hissed, his voice trembling. "What is your objective? Do you have any conception of the risk you are imposing upon the entire family enterprise?" I extricated myself from his grasp. "Endangering the company?" I questioned, my voice sharp with genuine bewilderment. "What are you referring to?" I simply made a donation. How does that jeopardize Price Properties? My father glanced around wildly, ensuring no one else was within earshot. His face was pale and slick with a sudden sheen of sweat. His anger had dissipated, replaced by sheer terror. "Do not feign ignorance with me, Imani," he hissed, his voice quivering. "Henderson, that trust fund. Your grandmother, my mother, she would not have." He seemed incapable of completing his sentence. He simply stared at me, his eyes wide with a profound, bone-deep fear. I observed him. The fragmented pieces coalesced, the final devastating revelation Mr. Henderson had imparted to me just last week. My father was not merely apprehensive about my newfound affluence. He was not simply mortified by my public address. He was fearful that I possessed complete knowledge. "Oh," I stated, my voice losing its warmth. "I see. You are not concerned about the donation, are you, father?" He merely stared, his breathing shallow. "You are worried about what else Grandma Florence placed within that trust." I took a small step closer, lowering my own voice. "Are you perhaps referring to the $10 million high-risk loan you secured 10 years ago? The one you required to cover the Midtown development project that nearly plunged you into bankruptcy?" His bloodshot eyes widened. "How? How could you possibly—" "Are you referring to the loan you acquired, which you secured by pledging Grandma Florence's commercial property portfolio as collateral, property she never authorized you to utilize?" My father's face, which moments before had been flushed with anger, was now a ghastly ashen white. He appeared on the verge of sickness. "Or," I delivered the final blow, "are you referring to the fact that you forged her signature on the collateral agreement, and that my grandmother, being the brilliant woman she was, discovered it, purchased that debt, and placed it, along with all the original forged documents, directly into the trust that I now control?" He emitted a small, choked sound and stumbled backward, gripping the bar for support. The facade of the proud, successful patriarch had vanished, shattered. All that remained was a guilt-ridden, terrified man. "How?" my father whispered, his voice hoarse. "How could you possibly know that?" "You seem to be forgetting whom I have been consulting, father," I replied, my voice as cold and hard as the marble bar against which he leaned. "Mr. Henderson, my grandmother's executor, the gentleman you just observed on stage with me. It transpires that Grandma Florence was an exceptionally meticulous record keeper." I watched him struggle to regain his composure. That was a business understanding between myself and my mother," he stammered, attempting to regain his footing. "It was understood." "Was it understood that you forged her name?" I interrupted. "Mr. Henderson possesses the original loan agreement, and he also has the expert handwriting analysis, confirming it is a forgery. Furthermore, he holds Grandma's sworn affidavit, detailing how she uncovered your fraud 3 years ago. She retained all original documentation." My father's face, a ghastly shade of grey, was now trapped, and he was acutely aware of it. "She was furious," I continued, pressing my advantage. "She could have had you prosecuted. She could have bankrupted you on the spot, but she refrained. She was, as she stated in her letter, pragmatic. She did not wish to tarnish the family name. So what did she do?" he breathed. "She did something far more astute. She had her bank quietly acquire the $10 million debt from the original lender. She purchased it. And then, in her final stroke of genius, she transferred the entire loan portfolio, including the original forged documents, directly into the Florence Preston Trust. The very same trust," I added softly, "of which I, upon my graduation, am the sole beneficiary and administrator." The full magnitude of the situation finally registered with him. I could discern the calculations in his eyes, the dawning realization. "Which means," I articulated, spelling it out for him, that Price Properties does not owe the bank $10 million. It owes me. I am your primary creditor, and as the administrator of my trust, I possess the complete legal authority to call in that loan. Immediately, he looked at me, his eyes filled with a tear I had never witnessed before. Imani, you cannot, he pleaded. His voice was no longer booming. It was the weak whisper of a defeated man. You would not. That would be the end of everything. The company, my reputation, your mother, Chloe. You would destroy this family. You would annihilate us. He was correct. With a single telephone call to Mr. Henderson, I could bankrupt him. I could seize the company, the residences, the vehicles. I could dismantle the very foundation of the Price family, the entity they had so highly esteemed, the same family that had just declared me an unworthy investment. I held all the leverage. The power in that moment was absolute. I looked at my father, this man who had dismissed me, who had chosen to fund my sister's vanity over my aspirations, and I offered him a small, cold smile. You are mistaken, father, I stated. I am not going to destroy the family. He looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. I am going to save it. My father regarded me, his face pale and desperate. Save it, he whispered, clinging to the word. What do you mean, Imani? Anything, I'll do anything. I knew you would not, he murmured. You are a good daughter. You would not destroy us. I held his gaze. I am not doing this for you, father, and I am not doing it for mother or Chloe. I am doing it for my grandmother. She did not wish for the family name to be tarnished. She simply desired accountability, and I shall achieve it. Price Properties is secure for the present. I will not call in the loan. The relief that washed over his face was so profound he nearly collapsed against the bar. He reached out to clasp my hand. Oh God, thank you, Imani, thank you. I'll repay you. I withdrew my hand, not unkindly, but with firm resolve. I am not finished. I am not calling in the loan, but I will be restructuring it, and my cooperation comes with stipulations, non-negotiable stipulations. He nodded rapidly, wiping his face with his hand. Yes, of course, anything. What is it? You desire funds? I can liquidate some assets. I can. I do not want your money, I stated flatly. I have my own, remember? No, this is not about me. This is about your investment. This is about your $50,000 donation. This is about the check you wrote for Chloe. His face tensed once more. That was different. That was for her marriage to aid her future. I understand, I interrupted. And now you are going to make another investment. My first condition is this. You are going to write another check tonight. Right now? He stared at me, bewildered. Another check for whom? For how much? For $300,000, I stated. He choked. What, Imani? That is an immense sum of money. I cannot simply... You cannot, I inquired, raising an eyebrow. You just handed it to Chloe. You just bestowed $50,000 upon the Van Pelts, who could purchase this entire golf club with their spare change. Do not tell me you are incapable. You simply choose not to, especially not for me. Is that it? He asked, his voice lowering. You desire the money? After all that discourse on stage, you desire the same $300,000. No, I responded, leaning in. You will not be writing the check to me. You made it abundantly clear that I am not a worthy investment. You are going to write the check to the Atlanta Community Children's Hospital. My hospital? He looked stunned. But you just gave them $5 million from your grandmother's fund. That was Grandma's donation, I clarified, my voice like tempered steel. This is from you. This is the investment you refused to make in me. You referred to my life's work as social work. You stated it was not lucrative. You are correct. It is not. We are desperately in need of funding. We are endeavouring to construct a new cardiac wing for newborns. That $300,000 will procure 2 state-of-the-art transport incubators. It will save dozens of lives. I stared at him. You expended such a substantial sum to impress a family of billionaires. Now, you will expend it to genuinely achieve something beneficial. You will write the check this evening before I depart this gathering, and you will present it to Mr. Henderson. Consider it your initial interest payment on the $10 million fraudulent loan you owe me. Consider it the Price family's second equitable investment in your other daughter's less than prestigious endeavor. My father stood there, breathing heavily. I could see the mechanisms turning in his mind. He was ensnared. The reputation he had dedicated his life to building was hanging precariously by a thread, and I held the scissors. A check, he finally conceded, his voice strained. Tonight, to the hospital. 300,000. Fine. Done. He looked utterly exhausted, defeated. Is that all? No, I replied. That is not all. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. What else? That is merely the initial stipulation. The funds are inconsequential, Father. That merely rectifies the balance sheet. This next aspect is more challenging. This pertains to the debt, the one you owe me personally, the one that has been accumulating for 30 years. What? What is it? I require a public apology. A what? He whispered. You heard me. I require a formal public admission, not merely a sorry, Imani. You will host another dinner in this very ballroom. You will invite every single individual present in this room tonight. The Van Pelts, your business associates, your friends, everyone who just witnessed you celebrating Chloe and dismissing me. Imani, you cannot be serious. And at this dinner, I continued, ignoring him, you and Mother will ascend that same stage, and you will impart the truth. You will inform them that you treated me unjustly, that you disregarded my choices, that you favored my sister, that you were in error. You will publicly acknowledge me, my work, and your failure as a parent, and you will apologize to me. Absolutely not, a voice shrieked from behind us. My mother, Michelle, had approached, her face a mask of white-hot rage. I will not be humiliated. You are insane. You are blackmailing us. I turned to face her. Blackmail? No, Mother, this is a debt restructuring. You and Father owe me $10 million, money you misappropriated by forging my grandmother's name. I am offering you terms. You can accept my terms, or you can confront the alternative. She is bluffing, James, my mother screamed at my father. She would not do it. She is our daughter. She would not destroy her own family. I simply looked at her, my expression serene. You were my family when you financed Chloe's loans. You were my family when you told me I deserved nothing. You were my family when you donated our resources to the Van Pelts instead of assisting me. You made your choice. Now I am making mine. I held her gaze for another second, then turned and raised my hand, catching Mr. Henderson's eye across the room. Mr. Henderson. He immediately straightened and began walking toward us. What are you doing? My mother gasped, grabbing my arm. I am informing him that negotiations have failed, I stated calmly, pulling my arm free. I am instructing him to proceed with calling in the loan. I am instructing him to release the forgery documentation and my grandmother's affidavit to the district attorney's office first thing Monday morning. No! My father lunged forward, gripping my arm with such force that it caused pain. Stop, do not, we will do it, we will do it. I looked at him, then at my mother. She was trembling, silent tears of pure fury and humiliation streaming down her face. Both of you? I inquired. My father looked at her. Michelle, say it. My mother looked from him to me, her chest heaving. Yes, she spat the word as if it were poison. We will do it. I raised my hand again, a simple gesture to halt. Mr. Henderson, ever the professional, saw it, stopped, and offered a slight nod, understanding perfectly. He turned and walked away. Good, I stated, smoothing my dress. Mr. Henderson will draft the agreement tomorrow. You will sign it by Monday. He will also accept the check for the hospital this evening. Now, if you will excuse me. I turned to exit the alcove. The battle was won. As I re-entered the main ballroom, I spotted Chloe across the room. She was weeping, her voice raised in an argument with her parents from a distance. You are just going to let her do this? My parents did not even acknowledge her. Then I saw Trevor Van Pelt. He had completely abandoned Chloe. He was walking directly toward me, his expression a mixture of calculation and intense, newfound interest. The final act was about to commence. I turned away from my parents, the click of my heels decisive on the polished marble floor. The ballroom had fallen into near-complete silence. The string quartet had ceased playing. The cheerful murmur of Atlanta's elite had vanished, replaced by a heavy, oppressive quiet, punctuated only by the sound of someone nervously clearing their throat near the rear. Every single gaze was fixed upon me. I could feel the weight of their stares, their astonishment, their judgment, their suddenly intense curiosity. I observed my father, James, still leaning against the bar, looking utterly defeated. My mother, Michelle, was furiously dabbing at her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, unadulterated rage. I was indifferent. I had accomplished my objective. The protective armor my grandmother had bequeathed to me was far more robust than I had ever imagined. My sole desire was to depart, to exit this room, this chapter of my existence, and never look back. I began walking towards the grand entrance, disregarding the whispers that were starting to ripple through the assembled guests. I ignored my mother's desperate, strangled cries of my name. I disregarded Chloe, whom I could see across the room staring at me, her face pale and crumpled, her debt-free celebration utterly ruined. I was nearly at the door. I was almost free. Imini, wait! The voice was smooth, confident, and directly behind me. I stopped but did not turn around. I knew precisely who it was. Trevor Van Pelt. Imini, he repeated, moving to stand directly in my path, blocking my egress. His expression was a stark contrast to the smug, calculating demeanor he had maintained all evening. Now it was one of intense, almost predatory admiration. It was repulsive. That was, he breathed, the most incredible thing I have ever witnessed. I simply stared at him, my face impassive. Pardon me, Trevor, I am departing. No, wait, please, he implored, holding up a hand. I am genuinely completely taken aback. What your parents did, what they said, it is unbelievable. Truly, and the way you handled it, the power, the intelligence. He shook his head, a low laugh escaping him. $5 million just like that. And that maneuver with your father's loan, pure genius. It wasn't a maneuver, Trevor. It was the truth. Now, if you will permit me to pass. No, listen, he insisted, stepping closer. I could detect the faint aroma of his expensive cologne. My parents are, well, they are stunned. My mother, Eleonora, she is deeply impressed. She respects power, and what you have just accomplished, that was power, real power. He glanced over his shoulder at Chloe, who was observing us, her face a mask of horrified betrayal. Trevor seemed utterly unconcerned. He turned back to me, his voice lowering. Chloe, she is simply not like you, is she? I mean, I see that now. She is not a leader. She is simple. All she speaks of is the wedding, the house, the parties. But you are a visionary. You are managing a multi-million-dollar trust. You are saving children's lives. You are the one in the family who actually possesses a vision. I finally spoke. Are you finished? No, I am not, he replied, his smile shifting to an intimate one. I need to be honest with you, Imani. I believe I made a grave error, a mistake concerning Chloe, he asked as if it were obvious. I was captivated by the superficial, the pretty face, the facile conversation, but I was not observing the true asset. It was always you. You are the one with the future. You are the one who comprehends how the world truly operates. My family, we value philanthropy. It is a significant aspect of our existence. What you have achieved tonight, that is the type of endeavor my family esteems. It is the type of endeavor I value. I am delighted my life's work meets your standards, I stated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Now please step aside, man. Just hear me out, he pleaded, lowering his voice even further, though he knew everyone was observing us. This engagement, it is not finalized until the papers are signed, so to speak. It is evident I chose the wrong sister. It is clear that you are the true prize within this family. I believe we should converse, truly converse. Tomorrow we could have lunch. We have so much in common. Our shared interest in significant charity and making an impact. He actually reached out as if to touch my arm. I observed his extended hand, the very one that had held my sister, adorned with a platinum timepiece that my father likely admired. This man who had stood by and chuckled as his prospective in-laws belittled me as mere charity work, and someone from a lower socio-economic bracket. This man who had witnessed my sister revel in my distress was now approaching me. Suddenly, with the shift in fortune, with my value publicly reassessed, I was perceived as a visionary, the true asset. You presume, I stated deliberately, that because I now possess wealth, I've suddenly become of interest to you. Not solely the wealth, he interjected swiftly, the acumen, the intellect required, the fact that you outmaneuvered your entire family, that's profoundly compelling. Chloe could never accomplish that. Her sole talent lies in squandering resources. You, however, possess the ability to generate and strategically deploy wealth. He was, in essence, attempting to market himself to me, pivoting from one sister to the other, right there amidst the grandeur of the ballroom, as if I were a commodity he desperately sought to acquire. Following an unexpectedly favorable financial report, he had recognized the significance of my grandmother's trust fund, my command over my father's enterprise, and my substantial $5 million contribution. He saw an opportunity for a more advantageous and profitable alliance, an upgrade to his current arrangement. I had never before experienced such profound disdain for another human being. I allowed the silence to linger. I studied Trevor Van Pelt, his impeccably tailored suit, his attractive, eager countenance, the glint in his eyes now tinged with a repulsive new light. I watched this man who had been betrothed to my twin now attempt to trade her for me, her seemingly less successful sibling, simply because my perceived worth had escalated. He viewed me as the more lucrative prospect, and then I did something entirely unexpected. I smiled. It wasn't a gesture of warmth, but a slow, deliberate, chillingly precise smile, the kind one offers an opponent in chess just before delivering the checkmate. Trevor's expression softened. He mirrored my smile, clearly misinterpreting my demeanor as burgeoning interest. He believed he had secured me, convinced I was akin to him, my parents, and Chloe, easily swayed by prestige and a good proposal. Lunch tomorrow, he proposed smoothly, at the French Laundry, my treat, naturally. I held his gaze, then, with deliberate slowness, let my eyes wander past his shoulder. I scanned the ballroom, locating my sister Chloe, still standing frozen, observing our interaction. Her face was a disheveled mess of smeared makeup and tears. She was witnessing her fiancé, the man around whom she had constructed her entire future, actively proposing an engagement to me in plain sight. She appeared utterly devastated. I returned my attention to Trevor. My smile remained fixed. "You know, Trevor," I began, my voice soft yet earnest, in the hushed surroundings, "you are absolutely correct. My sister and I are fundamentally, diametrically opposed." He beamed, leaning closer. "I knew you would perceive it. You operate on a different echelon. We are on different levels." "Indeed," I concurred. "For instance," I paused, allowing the moment to resonate, "my sister Chloe genuinely wished to marry you. She was enthusiastic about the prospect. She saw your family name, your wealth, and truly desired to be your wife." His smile faltered, a flicker of bewilderment crossing his features. He couldn't fathom the direction of my discourse. "But I continued, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that carried an unnerving chill, "perceive the same elements. I see your family name, I see your wealth, I see your social standing, and frankly, all that comes to mind is how astonishingly cheap you are." His face went rigid. The smile vanished. "What? What did you just say?" "I find you abhorrent," I stated, my smile finally subsiding. "You stood by my sister while she subjected me to humiliation. You observed my parents dismiss me. You not only tolerated it, but actively encouraged it. You were content to marry into a family that treated one of its own like refuse, and the very instant you discovered that this refuse might be more valuable than the treasure you had chosen, you attempted to upgrade your selection right here, in front of her, in front of everyone." I leaned in, mirroring his earlier posture. "You are not a visionary, Trevor. You are not powerful. You are merely a rapacious, spineless, opportunistic parasite. And the prospect of dining with you is the most repulsive suggestion I've heard all evening, and that's quite a statement." I glanced past him toward Chloe once more. "Chloe may have wanted you, but I would not accept you if you were the last man standing in Atlanta." I maintained his gaze for another beat, observing the color drain from his face, replaced by a mottled crimson of pure mortification. He had been publicly assessed and found wanting. "Now," I declared, my voice returning to its normal cadence, "if you will excuse me, I intend to converse with the genuine philanthropists present, those who are here to support a children's hospital rather than merely leverage a new social connection." I moved around him. He remained motionless, a stunned figure as I departed. I did not look back. I didn't need to. I could feel the wave of astonishment and a profound silence spreading behind me. I had reclaimed my narrative. I had reasserted my authority. And I had left the wreckage of my family's meticulously planned celebration for them to manage. The sound of Chloe's shriek pierced the stunned quiet of the ballroom. A high-pitched, grating cry ripped from her throat. She stumbled across the dance floor, her face a contorted mask of fury and disbelief. "Trevor!" she shrieked, clutching his arm. Trevor, who had been fixated on me with that unsettling, calculating gaze, looked down at her hand on his expensive suit as if it were a venomous serpent. "Trevor, you aren't going to her, are you?" Chloe pleaded, her voice cracking, her perfectly applied makeup beginning to run. "After what she just did, after she ruined everything, you dare abandon me for her." Trevor Van Pelt regarded my sister. His countenance, moments before so captivated, was now etched with cold fury. He loathed public spectacles above all else, and my sister, the woman he had chosen for her social standing, was orchestrating the most significant one of his life. He wrenched his arm from her grasp. "Get your hands off me, Chloe," he snarled, his voice low but audible. "Do you think this is about her? This is about you. This is about your entire disingenuous family. You stood by and allowed your parents, your family, to make that paltry $50,000 contribution. You are precisely like them. All of you, you are a fraud. No, Chloe implored. No, Trevor, please, it's not like that. The engagement is terminated, he stated, straightening his suit jacket. He was finished. Do not contact me. Do not reach out. My father, he added, his voice laced with a sharp, final venom, will be contacting your father in the morning to discuss the financial ramifications of this embarrassment. He did not glance at her again. He did not look at me. With a ramrod straight posture, he simply turned and stormed out of the ballroom. The heavy oak doors slammed shut behind him, the reverberation echoing like a gunshot. Chloe stood there for a prolonged moment, her arms still extended. She appeared utterly and completely shattered. The spotlight she had coveted all evening was now exclusively hers, and it was searing her. She then turned, her eyes wild and brimming with tears, and found her parents. They remained in their alcove, frozen in a tableau of shock. She began to walk towards them, her steps stiff, her white gown trailing. You, she whispered, her voice trembling. You did this, Mother. Michelle hurried forward. Chloe, darling, it's all right. He's merely upset. He will calm down. We can resolve this. Resolve this? Chloe's voice escalated to a scream. He's gone. The Van Pelts are gone. It's over. She slammed both fists onto their table, causing the glassware to rattle. And it's her fault. And yours. Why did she receive everything? Why? My father, James, finally found his voice. Chloe, for goodness sake, compose yourself. This is not the appropriate setting. Don't tell me to calm down, she shrieked, indifferent to who might hear. You knew about that trust fund, didn't you? You knew Grandma Florence left her all that money. You lied to me. You told me I was the special one. You told me I was the worthwhile investment. We weren't aware of the specifics, my mother stammered, glancing around frantically. The guests were all observing, their faces a mixture of pity and fascination. Liar! Chloe screamed. You let me. You paid off my debt to appear favorably to them. She gestured wildly towards the vacant Van Pelt table, then pointed a trembling finger at me. She's a multimillionaire. She was manipulating you. She was manipulating me. You let me look like a fool. You allowed me to walk into this trap. She has everything, the money, the power, and she just humiliated my fiancé. She has everything, and I have nothing. My parents were speechless. They could offer no rebuttal because she was correct. They had deceived her. They had deceived everyone. James simply stood, his gaze fixed on the checkbook on the table, the check he was about to tender for my father's fraudulent activities. Michelle collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent, racking sobs. Their cherished offspring, their prestigious investment, was ruined. Their reputation lay in tatters, and every bit of it was a consequence of their own actions. I turned away from the unsightly, raw spectacle of my family's disintegration. I could no longer bear to watch. It was their predicament, their creation, their repercussions. My involvement in their drama had concluded. I turned to Mr. Henderson, who stood calmly beside me, his leather folder secured under his arm. Thank you for the evening, I said quietly. Before he could respond, a group of individuals approached us. Their faces presented a striking, wonderful contrast to the anger and panic evident across the room. They appeared gratified, their eyes alight with hope. Dr. Preston, Dr. Amani, Preston.
A man with kind, silver-haired eyes stepped forward, extending his hand. I am Dr. Mark Ellison, Chief of Pediatrics at Atlanta Community Children's. I clasped his hand, the simple professional gesture feeling more genuine than any familial embrace I had ever experienced. Dr. Ellison, I replied, it is an honor to meet you. I completed my residency training at your institution. We are aware, he said, his voice thick with emotion, his grip unwavering. We all know who you are, and we are rendered speechless. Imani, may I call you Imani? You have no conception of what you have just accomplished. I am merely fulfilling my grandmother's final wishes, I stated, feeling an unexpected surge of emotion. You are underwriting our entire future, he declared, his voice wavering. We have been endeavoring to secure funding for a new neonatal intensive care unit for 3 years. We've resorted to bake sales and imploring for any assistance. The county grant we were relying on was just denied last month. He gestured toward the large ceremonial check I still held, emblazoned with the sum of $5 million. This, he continued, this is not merely a donation. This is the entirety of the wing. This represents state-of-the-art transport incubators. This means respiratory ventilators for infants born at 24 weeks gestation. You have just funded our entire NICU for the next 5 years. Another woman stepped forward, sharp and elegant in a business suit. I am on the hospital board, Dr. Preston. What you accomplished tonight, taking that stage, articulating your story in the face of... She glanced at my family, and making such a declaration.
It was the most courageous, the most impactful act of philanthropy I have ever witnessed. You didn't just contribute funds, you imparted a crucial lesson to every individual in this room regarding true value and genuine prestige. Other physicians and board members congregated around, their voices overlapping. We can finally acquire the new cardiac monitors, our community outreach program. We can expand it. We've had to turn away high-risk transports from rural counties. Now we can accept them. They spoke simultaneously, their faces illuminated by a genuine, potent joy. They were discussing saving lives, aiding children, discussing the work, the very social work my mother had dismissed with such disdain. I looked over their shoulders across the magnificent, now silent ballroom. The festivities were undeniably concluded. Most of the guests were departing, conversing in hushed tones, casting backward glances at the disarray. And in the center of the room I saw them, my family. They were a broken, pathetic little island. Chloe was still sobbing in her chair, her white gown appearing crumpled and stained. Trevor was gone, the Van Pelts had departed. My father stood over my mother, his face ashen, his hands trembling as he attempted to help her rise. They appeared so diminished. I had spent my entire life envisioning this moment, the moment of my ultimate triumph, the moment they would finally acknowledge me. I had anticipated feeling a sense of victory. I had expected a surge of satisfaction, of vindication. I had believed I would finally feel a sense of contentment witnessing them as broken as they had made me feel for 3 decades. Yet I felt nothing. No, that wasn't entirely accurate. I felt fatigue. I felt a profound, bone-deep exhaustion. I felt the cumulative weight of 30 years of striving for recognition, and I felt a distant, hollow pity. Dr. Preston, Dr. Ellison's voice drew me back from the precipice. Are you quite all right? You seem miles away. I shifted my gaze from my fractured family to these strangers, these colleagues, these individuals who saw me, who valued my work, who appreciated my decisions, and who regarded me with such profound gratitude. I offered him a small, genuine smile. I am quite well, doctor, I replied. In fact, I believe I am just beginning. I possessed my own resources, I held my own influence, I belonged to my own community. The question remained, what course of action would I pursue? Would I sever all ties permanently, Or would I compel my father to honor the $10 million debt he still owed me? The dilemma of forgiveness versus retribution hung in the air. I turned away from my father, the decisive click of my heel on the polished floor replacing the thick, heavy silence broken only by their stares, their astonishment, their curiosity. I observed my father, James, still leaning against the bar, appearing utterly vanquished. My mother, Michelle, was not shedding tears of sadness, but tears of pure fury. I paid them no mind. I had accomplished my objective. The protective layer my grandmother had bequeathed to me was far more robust than I had ever imagined. My sole desire was to depart, to exit this venue, to close this chapter of my existence, and to never look back. I commenced walking towards the grand entryway, disregarding the whispers that were just beginning to circulate amongst the assembled company. I ignored my mother's desperate, choked cry of my name. I overlooked Chloe, whom I could discern across the room, her gaze fixed upon me, her face pale and crumpled, her debt-free celebration in utter ruins. I was nearly at the exit. I was almost liberated. Imani, his voice was not a command, but a strangled croak. I paused but did not turn. There is nothing further to discuss, Father. You have my terms. Mr. Henderson will be in contact on Monday to finalize the restructuring or to initiate foreclosure proceedings. The decision is yours. Wait, he pleaded, pushing his chair back and rising. He looked haggard, appearing 10 years older than he had an hour prior. I spoke with Henderson just now while you were with the doctors. I waited, offering no response. He has the check, James stated, his voice low as if each word caused him physical pain. For the hospital, $300,000, I've just signed it. This gave me pause. I had not anticipated such swift capitulation. And he took a shaky breath. We will host the dinner. Your mother, she will make the arrangements. Everyone who was present this evening, we will convey whatever message you require us to. His compliance was so absolute, so rapid that it felt almost anticlimactic. The formidable James Price, the patriarch who governed our family with an iron fist, was utterly defeated. His entire identity had been constructed upon the bedrock of his company, Price Properties, and I had just demonstrated that I owned the foundation, the land, and the air rights. He had no recourse. I looked at my mother. She was observing us, her eyes brimming with a helpless fury. She felt no remorse, only defeat. I shall await the invitation then, I stated coolly. I turned to leave. Imani. I turned back. This time his voice was different. It wasn't the voice of a businessman, but that of a father. It was a tone I hadn't heard since I was 5 years old, before Chloe's birth, before the comparisons began. Your grandmother Florence, he stammered, rubbing his face. She was right about everything. He looked at me, truly looked at me, for what felt like the first time in my life. The anger had vanished, the calculation had dissipated. All that remained was a hollow, echoing regret. I missed it, he whispered, mostly to himself. I was so preoccupied with business, with the name, with Chloe, with Trevor. He shook his head. I didn't see you. I didn't see what you were becoming. I am sorry, Imani. He had uttered the words I had waited 30 years to hear, the words I had pleaded for, cried for, and worked relentlessly towards. I am sorry. It should have felt like a victory. It should have brought release. I should have experienced the warmth of reconciliation, the healing of a lifetime of wounds. But as I stood there, gazing at this broken man, I felt nothing. It was too late. The apology was not directed at me, the daughter he loved, but at Dr. Preston, the multi-millionaire who held his company's fate in her hands. The apology was merely another transaction, the final desperate price he was willing to pay for his own preservation. It was. I looked at him for a long, silent moment. I allowed the quiet to stretch, letting him stew in the discomfort of his own confession. I know, I finally stated. It was all I could offer. It was all he merited. I turned my back on my father and my mother. I turned my back on the remnants of Chloe's party. I walked past the stunned guests, past the Van Pelt table, now conspicuously empty. Mr. Henderson was waiting for me by the door. He held a new leather briefcase. "The check is secured, Dr. Preston," he announced with a small, proud smile, "and I have the preliminary restructuring agreement. I will have it couriered to your father's new legal counsel in the morning." "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I replied, "for everything, for honoring my grandmother's wishes." "It was my profound pleasure," he responded. "Florence would have adored tonight. She adored theatre." He held the grand oak door open for me. I stepped out of the ballroom and into the cool, serene night air of the clubhouse. The artificial warmth, the oppressive aroma of roses and champagne, all of it faded behind me. I was free. I did not look back. I handed my valet ticket to the young man who promptly departed to retrieve my unpretentious car. I stood alone beneath the portico, inhaling the scent of pine and damp earth. My phone vibrated in my purse. For a moment I was certain it was my mother or Chloe or even Trevor, initiating another barrage of accusations. I retrieved it. The number was unfamiliar, originating from the local Atlanta area code. I hesitated, then answered, my voice wary. "Hello, is this Dr. Imani Price?" A woman's voice inquired, professional and crisp. "This is Dr. Preston," I corrected. "Imani Preston." I was using my grandmother's surname. It felt appropriate. "Dr. Preston, my name is Maria Jenkins. I am a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I apologize for the late hour, but I have just received a tip from the board of the Children's Hospital regarding a significant philanthropic event this evening. They mentioned a $5 million donation, the largest in their history, and that it originated from you." I looked up at the stars, now visible away from the city's glare. "My story, my narrative." "Yes," I affirmed, my voice clear and strong. "That is correct. It was made on behalf of the Florence Preston Trust." I could hear the reporter typing furiously. "That's incredible. Most of our readers associate the Price family name with real estate. Not this. Why this hospital? Why now? What's the story behind this?" I smiled. The valet pulled up in my modest sedan, but I held up a finger, signaling him to wait. Stepping a short distance from the festivity, I moved towards the shadowed expanse of the golf course, my back to the gathering. "I would be delighted to offer my perspective," I responded, my tone imbued with a sincerity that was completely authentic. This narrative commences with my maternal grandmother, Florence Preston. My recounting began. I spoke of my grandmother's deep conviction in the strength of collective effort, of her unwavering trust in the act of giving, and of her earnest aspiration to champion the uncelebrated yet crucial endeavors of aiding young ones. She held the firm belief that genuine merit, I stated, my voice resolute, transcends the status of one's spouse or the extravagance of their attire. In her view, it is measured by the extent to which one can positively impact the lives of others. I shared my personal account with the journalist. I imparted my unvarnished reality to her. I then proceeded to my vehicle, entered it, and departed the estate. My words at last, echoing in the nocturnal stillness, finally articulating the sole narrative that held genuine significance. Familial treachery frequently arises from envy and a misguided perception of importance. Imani's relatives lauded Chloe's distinguished trajectory, concurrently devaluing Imani's commendable yet less affluent decision. Unbeknownst to them, Imani possessed considerable hidden affluence and the capacity to dismantle their entire ancestral renown. The crucial takeaway is to consistently resist allowing external judgments to dictate your inherent value. While they were preoccupied with commending a superficial emblem of achievement, Amani was strategically poised with the undisputable facts. Authentic fortitude lies in discreet progression, allowing your accomplishments and their duplicity to be unveiled at the opportune juncture. Have you ever faced the necessity of substantiating your worth to relatives who solely esteemed outward appearances of prosperity? Please share your experiences in the section below and remember to give this a thumbs up and follow for more.